Look, now the Sessions hearing is going on, and he gets the chance to come before a number of different senators and others to defend his record. And so in this first video, here is a section of his opening statement.
I was accused in 1986 of failing to protect the voting rights of African Americans by presenting the Perry County case, the voter fraud case, and of condemning civil rights advocates and organizations, and even harboring, amazingly, sympathies for the KKK. These are damnably false charges. I abhor the Klan and what it represents and its hateful ideology. As Civil Rights Division attorneys have testified before the committee, I supported fully their historic cases that the Justice Department filed to advance civil rights and that I supported, including cases to desegregate schools, abolish at-large elections for cities, county commissions, and school boards. I never declared the NAACP was un-American or that a civil rights attorney was a disgrace to his race. I understand the demands for justice and fairness made by our LGBT community. I will ensure that the statutes protecting their civil rights and their safety are fully enforced.
So some of the things you just heard there are demonstrably false. He did say the things he says he didn't say. And that's on the record. So
he's previously said that he said them.
Yeah, he's admitted to saying them in the past. So, okay, but it's the Trump era. You could just make things up and just move on with your life.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying something that's counterfactual. So what? 2 + 2 = 5. I'd like to be the Attorney General. Now, a little bit of silver lining here. At least we had a guy who, joked that he liked the KKK before until he found out they smoked pot, etc. Now in 2016, at least he has to say that he's in favor of the LGBT community.
Even though he's not.
Yeah, he's not going to be, and he's demonstrated.
He has to say it.
He's demonstrated in no way that he is their ally. In fact, he has opposed many things that they've done. But at least he's got to come out and say, oh, I love black people and gay people. Love them.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's a tiny bit of progress.
Exactly. Now, Senator Franken spoke with him, asked him about his previous quote saying that he had prosecuted 20 to 30 civil rights cases, which he had to admit during the hearing. He did not have any evidence of having done that. So that was a nice embarrassing moment for him.
Let's not just gloss over that. So he lied about all these civil rights cases that he prosecuted.
Yeah.
When
he prosecuted some.
Right, but not anywhere near the degree to which he said he did. And that's the whole point. When you had his position, your job was to prosecute those cases. So if you chose to prosecute only a few of them and leave most of them behind, that tells you where your priorities lie. That's why when Senator Franken catches him in that lie, that is very significant.
Exactly. And now, again, on the whole race thing, let's see how the Republicans approach his history of having said extremely questionable things when it comes to race. Here you're going to see him speaking with Lindsey Graham.
I'm from South Carolina, so I know what it's like sometimes to be accused of being a conservative from the South. That means something other than you're a conservative from the South. In your case, people have fairly promptly tried to label you as a racist or a bigot or whatever you want to say. How does that make you feel?
Well, it does not feel good. Senator Graham, I appreciate the question. You have a Southern name. You come from South Alabama. That sounds worse to some people, South Alabama. When I came up as a United States attorney, I had no real support group. I didn't prepare myself well in 1986, and there was an organized effort to caricature me as something that wasn't true. And it was very painful. I didn't know how to respond and didn't respond very well. I hope my tenure in this body has shown you that the caricature that was created of me was not accurate. It wasn't accurate then, and it's not accurate now.
So that was my favorite softball of all time. So some people are very unfairly accused you of being racist, not based on any evidence, but just on who you are.
And your name.
Right. And how do you feel about that? Wow, that is a penetrating question.
Yeah.
So then he's like, oh, thank you very much, Lindsey Graham. I really do appreciate that question. Yeah.
I think we found the fill-in if Sean Hannity needs a week or two off.
So, okay, so that's coordinated to tell you, oh, golly, gee, that is not true. That's not based on evidence. Yeah. They're actually discriminating upon us because I'm from South Alabama. Look, dude, nobody knows the difference between North and South Alabama unless you're in Alabama. So it's not like anybody was like, hey, let's make up that thing from 30 years ago because he's from South Alabama.
Yeah.
Is he actually racist? Who cares? Let's not even bother investigating evidence. Who cares? He's from South Alabama, and his name, those poor Southern whites, they have had no power in this country at all, John.
And that has nothing to do with it being Alabama. I'm from Southwest Connecticut. Does that mean anything to you? Probably not, I imagine. And look, behind all of this is the concerns that his views on race will affect how he investigates perhaps issues of police brutality, if that ever becomes an issue in America in some dark future. Or for instance, what are his views on the Voting Rights Act, which he's called an intrusive piece of legislation and doesn't support? That seems scary to a lot of people. Is he going to support some sort of national ID or citizenship test or whatever? We know that he's vigorously opposed to any expansion of voting rights. He was on Democracy Now!, and Amy Goodman asked him about early voting, same-day registration, all of those things. He's against them down the line. That's scary for a guy who wants to be Attorney General.
This has real effect. So it isn't about name-calling. It certainly isn't about... So what, we would be opposed to what? Everybody from Alabama? That's ridiculous. All white folks in the country? That's ridiculous. The idea that they're the ones being discriminated upon while they pass laws to make it harder for African Americans to vote and minorities to vote in this country is crazy. That's saying, hey, look, man, in the good old days, I used to be able to discriminate against these folks all the time. And now you're telling me I can't discriminate. That means you're discriminating against me. You've taken some degree of power away from me that I used to lord over other Americans that are supposed to have equal rights to me. So we are going backwards here. And so my guess is that Jeff Sessions will get confirmed fairly easily. But buckle up.
That's the concern. Really fast, just to give you a better idea of who he is as a person outside of the racial stuff, before we move on, there's a couple more good videos we want to get to. He has called CO2 not a pollutant, it's plant food. So he believes it's plant food. That's what it is. Global warming is made up. He says that he will abandon President Barack Obama's executive actions on immigration, just won't agree with them, or won't follow them, because he says they're unconstitutional, which is not in his power to determine. I think the Supreme Court actually ends up doing that most of the time. When asked about Trump's assertions that millions of fraudulent votes were cast during the last election, he said, I believe there is regular fraud. It happens regularly. So that gives you an idea of what he thinks about voting rights going forward. Voted against the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. Voted to restrict workers from bringing civil right and wage and hour state law cases as class actions. Another area that he, as Attorney General, would have to potentially rule on. Voted against the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, the Affordable Care Act, and Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act. Voted in favor of Keystone XL and expanded offshore drilling. Is in favor of the First Amendment Defense Act, which provides a legal defense to allow people to discriminate against those of the LGBT community, which is odd because in his opening statement he said he supports their rights, but he wants them to be able to be legally discriminated against, and also voted in favor of a constitutional amendment to stop them from being able to marry each other. So a little bit of inconsistency there on that community.
Just want to focus real quick on two things. This guy runs as a populist in Alabama. He talks against the banks all the time. But that's what drives me crazy about a hypocrite like Jeff Sessions. In reality, he wants to deregulate the banks and let them run wild. Take any kind of risk they want, play with consumers' money, the customers put in their deposits. Jeff Sessions wants the bankers to be able to gamble with your money. Are you going to get the profits from that? No. And if they lose it, what's going to happen? It's going to come out of our taxpayer pockets. But Jeff Sessions pretends to be against Wall Street and then turns around and helps them in every imaginable way because he's a giant hypocrite. And he's not just against illegal immigration. There's a lot of people in the country against illegal immigration. He's also against legal immigration. He says he doesn't want to give out visas to really qualified people from outside the country that are going to work in tech, science, engineering, et cetera. He's like, no, I just don't want any foreigners. I'm not interested in foreigners. Yeah. So they're going to be the most qualified people on the planet. I don't want them here. They're foreigners.
He raved about a 1924, I believe, law that cut down on the number of legal Asian immigrants that were allowed to come in. He said that it was an amazing law because it helped to stabilize the racial population and stop it from going too far towards minorities.
Based on, if that's not racist, I think you misunderstand the definition. He's like, it's not because the Asians that were coming in were going to lower the standard of living or anything like that. It was that they were Asian. And he's like, well, if we hadn't done that law, then the country wouldn't be as white. Why would you accuse me of racism? I don't get it.
It's weird.
And by the way, this is not the only racist that's, Trump apparently loves him. And one of the reasons he likes him is because he's a winner. So in his last race, he ran unopposed because Democrats are the worst party on the planet, okay? And he says, like, oh, he's so good, he wins without anybody even running against him, right? Plus, remember the other top advisor that Donald Trump has is Steve Bannon, who also, on the record, while interviewing Trump during this campaign, said that there are too many Asian CEOs in the Valley, in the Silicon Valley. And Trump was like, well, no, we want the good ones to come in, to be fair to Trump, right?
Yeah.
And Bannon was like, no, but we have to protect our culture.
Wink, wink,
Okay.
wink.
So these are the racists that are now going to be in charge.
Yeah.
Enjoy and brace for impact.
Become a TYT member and you get all the shows on the network, including Aggressive Progressive, the most progressive show there is anywhere. Check it out, tytnetwork.com/join.